Hello world, welcome to Clear the Air, episode 8. Today I am very excited to bring you the first guest on the Clear the Air podcast. This woman has done amazing work. She has been a big inspiration to me and a big help with her program in helping me build Clear the Air as a platform. So I'm really excited to introduce her and have a conversation with her, but first I just wanted to give a little update. I'm filming this intro on April 2nd, and the podcast is coming out on April 10th. So as we know, things in the world are progressing quite quickly, and on a day-by-day basis, it's really hard to say what one day is going to look like in comparison to the day before. I just want to say I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you're managing. I know things seem unpredictable right now. There are reports from the government, at least for Ontario and Canada, that social distancing might go on for another 12 weeks. Really hoping it doesn't, but at the same time, that definitely seems reasonable. And hearing numbers like that can be really challenging mentally, especially when you're a person who really needs that social connection. For myself, I'm pretty independent most of the time. I'm starting to feel that really deep longing for more human interaction with a diverse group of people. And you can get that still through connecting virtually. But I just want you to know, if you are really struggling right now, you're not alone. There are many people who are feeling the same way. And it's just important to connect with people and to express your feelings and to say how you're doing. When people ask you how you're doing, be honest. Don't try to hide it because you don't think they're going to want to hear it. It's really important that you take care of yourself and you reach out for help. I know this seems never ending right now. I know there's a lot of uncertainty, but just remember this will pass, and I think there will be good things that come out of this. I think we will be a stronger community. I think we will have the clear recognition of problems within our society in terms of how social systems are, how we support certain marginalized groups in our community. These things will come to the surface and we will be able to address them, and we will be more connected and be able to collaborate more, and policy will have a new way of dealing with things because of how rapidly the situation has come and how rapidly we have required policy change in order to address the coronavirus issue. So not everything is negative right now. And I just wanted to put that out there before we got into the episode. I hope you're doing well. I hope you are taking care of yourself and finding some time to relax and be calm. On to the episode. Today, our special guest is Tania Del Matto. Tania has more than 15 years experience working with both social purpose businesses and nonprofits. She is also an experienced social entrepreneur, having started and operated a national not-for-profit since 2007. In the first 8 years of her career, Tania created and launched national and international projects that advance sustainable consumption and production, greening small businesses and environmental education for both private and public sector clients. In 2007, Tania co-founded My Sustainable Canada, a national not-for-profit social enterprise with a mandate to help people and organizations make more sustainable choices. Tania joined Greenhouse as director in 2013. She is responsible for designing and executing programming that helps advance the implementation at the University of Waterloo's strategy on entrepreneurship and has a specific lead role on social entrepreneurship in partnership with SEED at the Faculty of Environment. I met Tania when I joined the Greenhouse program this time last year. For me, just to go back, Greenhouse is a social incubator program for students at the University of Waterloo who have an idea for a project, a business, anything like that, just something that they are really passionate about, and they want to turn it into something. They want to take an idea and make a tangible project or a tangible business out of it, but they're not really sure how to do it, and they need the support, whether it be mentor support, financial support, just some guidance on how to start a business. That's what Greenhouse offers. So you can go in with an idea, or if you have some general sense of an area you want to focus in, but you're not sure what the gaps are, what you could provide as a unique business, Greenhouse also can help you find those key areas and help you find that thing that you are really passionate about. So you can go in placement with an organization who has already defined a problem that they are trying to address, and you can help them develop innovative solutions to that problem. So through Greenhouse, I was the community animator back in spring of 2019. So that was a position where I was helping the innovators in residence, so students who were living in the residence where the Greenhouse Incubator program takes place. I was helping them build community connections. I was organizing events. I was just being a part of Greenhouse. And at the time, I didn't have to come in with a specific venture in mind, and a venture is the word that we use for project in Greenhouse. But I wanted to take advantage of the situation. I had this opportunity to build something, to use these resources. So I said, okay, why not come in with Clear the Air? At the time, it was still Jenna's journey. And without Greenhouse, it would not have become Clear the Air. I would not have a podcast either. I would not have developed the platform as much as I have. So Greenhouse has really helped me build my entrepreneurial skills in such a short amount of time. And it's allowed me to develop so many new connections. That's one of the things I love about Greenhouse, and we'll talk about in this interview. There are countless ways to connect with people who are in the sector you are trying to get into with your project. You just have so many opportunities to meet new people and form potential partnerships. So Tania is the director of all this programming right now. She is the first one I met coming into Greenhouse. She is my mentor, so she helps guide me through the development and the progression of my venture, which is Clear the Air. And I just thought that it would be fitting to have her on the podcast, because without her and without Greenhouse and all the other amazing mentors and people at Greenhouse, I would not have been able to build Clear the Air in the way that I have. So I wanted to give a shout out to Tania. You are amazing. You are an inspiration to me, and I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to share your journey and the journey of Greenhouse. My goal with the podcast, with the blog, just with the platform in general, is to show you how you can make global change through individual actions, showing you that you have the power to make change. And that's exactly what Tania and Greenhouse do with their program. They help youth identify a problem that exists in the world, a problem that the student is passionate about changing, about improving, and then they help that youth individual build a solution to it that will benefit not just themselves, but others within the world. So I think that this conversation I have with Tania is a great opportunity for you as an audience, as a listener, to understand how you can bring ideas to life, how you can navigate the world of entrepreneurship as a youth individual, how you can integrate so many different ideas from sustainability to entrepreneurship to business to create something that you are truly passionate about. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. I'm really excited to share it with you. Without further ado, let's get on to the interview. Tania, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, what you do, and how you are a part of the sustainability and environmental realm?
Yeah, for sure. It's great to be with you today, Jenna. My name's Tania Del Matto. I'm the director of a program called Greenhouse at the University of Waterloo. And what we do is we help young people start social purpose ventures. So this could be anything from starting grassroots change initiatives in the sustainability space. It could involve supporting young people in making policy change, or it could also involve helping young people start ventures, so for-profit or nonprofit businesses.
Awesome. Thank you. And for those who don't know, Tania is our first guest on the podcast, which is really exciting. But I thought it was very fitting because Greenhouse has been a program that has really helped me build the platform and build it quickly, because I joined Greenhouse in the spring term last year. So that would have been May 2019. And the platform itself has just accelerated dramatically since then. So the work you're doing is amazing, and I could definitely speak to it. I'm just curious, and I'm sure everyone else is curious, how did you get started in sustainability and entrepreneurship, and how did you create these broader initiatives like My Sustainable Canada and Greenhouse?
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think back to where would be some starting points, right? And I think for many people in this space, there's not just one specific moment that you can point ourselves to, but I think growing up as young Tanya, as a kid, I was always the type of kid who wanted to build things, and I was always trying to change things in one shape or form or another. So whether it was like the way games were played or wanting to take something and modify it in some way. And then I would say from like a schooling perspective, it was probably when I was in, oh gosh, maybe like grade 8 science class back in the day. There was a lot of talk about something called the ozone layer and the fact that it was depleting, and thought like that. I think that was the first moment that I had thinking more broadly beyond my own local context, like how important the environment is and how kind of vulnerable it is to human activity. And so that sort of set me on a path of just being interested in those types of problems and in the complexity of those types of problems. And then when it came to deciding on what to do after high school, I always knew that I wanted to pursue something at university. And initially, actually, I was going to go into architecture. So, because I was really interested in like buildings and things like that. But then I made a bit of a pivot, and I thought, well, I still wanted to sort of pursue this sort of problem solving piece. And so that's when I was drawn to a program at the University of Waterloo. At the time, that was called Environment and Resource Studies, and saw that there was also a co-op component where you could go and get real world experience kind of in between academic terms. And so I thought that, that sounds really valuable, because I didn't quite know what I wanted to do or what the space looked like. And that was really helpful, like in terms of kind of informing the activities that were out there. And probably it set me on, just some interesting journeys exploring what you can do to make an impact out there in various roles. I was involved in some co-ops that were more helping clean up contaminated sites, so more like end of pipe kind of stuff, and valuable work. But then I was always questioning, like, why is this polluted in the first place, right? And what can we do to change that? And then got into some roles that were more along that lines in the early phases of my my career after university, in the space called pollution prevention, or something called cleaner production, which is kind of looking at how goods and services are made and what they're made of, how we might sort of close loops so that we're not wasting so much. So it got really into more of the prevention space. And then from there, it evolved into then, okay, that's the production side, but what do we do as individuals, as citizens, as consumers, on making smarter choices, right? And that kind of led into me becoming more entrepreneurial and actually starting a venture with a colleague of mine. And I'll stop there. It's a long-winded answer to your question, but I can certainly also speak to then how I ended up in this role at the university. That's a whole other story altogether. So.
Awesome, thank you. So when you were in high school or in your early years as a university student, did you know what entrepreneurship was, or did you really know that you could go beyond, you could create your own career, or were you set on, these are the jobs that are out there, this is what I can do?
Yeah, good question. At the time when I was going through university, there wasn't really much talk about entrepreneurship, or just this whole narrative around, hey, you could start your own things. And certainly there wasn't the levels of support or programs out there for folks to tap into. It was more, how can you go out and make an impact in various capacities, whether that's in the nonprofit charitable world, whether that's in government, or whether that's in business. So that was kind of the sort of the overall lens that I was looking at things. And I would say in those co-op opportunities, though, I was always thinking about how I could kind of go above and beyond what was expected, or try and add value in a unique and different way. And I think this is what young people really bring to the table, is they're able to see things differently. And I was lucky enough to have co-op placements that sort of allowed for that creativity. And so I would say, even though at the time it wasn't really called entrepreneurship, or we weren't talking about the entrepreneurial mindset, I was sort of, embracing that kind of approach in the work that I was doing through my co-op placements, and just seeing how I could add value in new and different ways that were creative. So, but yeah, I mean, outside of being like selling Girl Guide cookies, things like that growing up, I wouldn't necessarily say I was destined on this path to be an entrepreneur, right? It was just not something that was part of the culture, if you will. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And even for myself, I know when I was in high school, I think we had one business class on entrepreneurship, but only people who wanted to go into business took that course. And I really didn't know much about entrepreneurship until not even in my first year of university, but it wasn't until I came into Greenhouse last year that I really started understanding, okay, this is what it looks like to start your own venture. These are all the different components you have to start thinking about. So for someone that doesn't have that background but has an idea of something they want to create, but they don't know what they need to do or how they can actually turn that idea into something tangible, what would you recommend for them to start doing to actually make that idea happen?
I mean, yeah, like, even if I reflect on my own personal journey through social entrepreneurship, when I started this venture with a colleague called My Sustainable Canada, our first starting point was like, okay, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? Like, we kind of started there, right? And we were really passionate and driven by this notion that, hey, if we just empower people and provide them with tools and resources to make more sustainable choices, they will, right? That was kind of sort of the notion that we went into and what we were trying to solve there. And so we were really initially, in those early days, focused on individuals and empowering individuals to vote with their dollar, right? For like a fair, greener, just society, if you will. We found really early on in that discovery process that, first of all, from an impact perspective, it was you spend a lot of time individual by individual trying to move the needle on that. So from an impact perspective, it was very challenging. And then from a business lens of, okay, how do we make money here so that we can sustain ourselves? It was also very challenging to find a business model that would work. And so in those early days, it was a bit of a struggle to get things going. And then we landed on probably a bigger problem, which we found we could solve, which was this idea of, how do larger organizations spend their dollars, and can we help support them in redirecting those purchases towards more sustainable buying practices? And that's where we landed on doing some research. We started with the public sector, and specifically like healthcare, and actually looked at how they went about buying food and if they were even aware of where their food was coming from. And through that research, we quickly found out that they really didn't know where the food was coming from to know whether they could even redirect, their purchases to be so sort of more local and sustainable, right? So we landed on something that was pretty substantial in terms of a problem to solve. And then from there, it was like, okay, now that we've kind of defined that a bit more, now we can actually figure out, well, what's the innovation, right? Like, what's the idea? And where we saw ourselves adding the most value was we were hearing from hospitals, well, we don't even know like who we should be engaging with, because we don't have networks in kind of the food space, right? To even know who to reach out to find out if there's, supply out there that's local and sustainable. And then on the production side, the local growers are saying, well, we have no idea how to even respond to requests for food from these larger institutions, to even know how they might want it, assembled, what format they wanted, and all these kinds of things. So it made a lot of sense to say, okay, why don't we bring these two groups together and just start having conversations? And so that's what we ended up doing. It was like a simple thing at the time, but quite powerful, and where we had in a room like buyers that buy food on behalf of like 25 plus hospitals in Southern Ontario, and then we had folks in the room that grow food, right? And just by brokering those conversations, we were able to, in a short period of time, about a year, take the buying of a group of hospitals in southwestern Ontario, about 25 of them, from what we had measured was like 5% of their food purchases just happened to be local, to over 15%, right? And it was just from that connecting and that brokering kind of thing. So I would say, like, where to start, like as a high school student or as a young person, is really look to really spend a lot of time digging into what the problem really is, right? And the work that you put in up front on that will really put you in a well position to figure out, okay, what, where's the piece where I can add value, or where I can offer something that will solve a part of it, or even if you're lucky enough, in the right circumstances enough, help even transform some of these systems, right? So that's what I would say, like, based on my own personal lived experience, and that's certainly the advice that we give our students as well, that are part of the greenhouse community.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you're telling that story, I saw a lot of that reflected in the frameworks that you use within the greenhouse program. Like for greenhouse, we have the level ups, or we have these milestones that you have to achieve with the venture you're creating. So the first one is, what's the problem you're trying to identify, and how can you fill the gap, and going on and on through that. So going back to greenhouse, in connection to that, what are some of the main goals you hope to achieve with a program like Greenhouse? How do you try to show youth how to specifically find out what the problem is they're trying to address, how they fill that gap, what they can bring to the table?
Yeah, like, a lot of it is we try and go with the philosophy of meeting students where they're at, right? So I think I firmly believe that everybody has the potential for impact and making a contribution in whatever way, right? It doesn't have to be this huge grand thing. It certainly can lead to that, depending on the time and the energy that you put towards it, and maybe the resources that you're able to tap into. But I would say, for all of our students, like, one of the fundamental pieces we start with is kind of, and it's sort of undertones the sort of the mission of Greenhouse, is to really help young people tap into that sense of purpose, right? And that sense of purpose is really, it's a personal journey, right? So some of our students will come in with a lived experience with the problem that they're trying to solve, and oftentimes, like, that's a great starting point, right? Because we can actually build on those experiences to figure out, well, how do we then make change happen given the lived experience that you've had with that problem. But for other students, and this is just, they're, and I was like this as well. I would say, in like high school and university, was I didn't necessarily have a clear, specific, idea of what problem I wanted to solve, but I certainly wanted to make an impact and a difference. So another element of Greenhouse and opportunities that we have there is, if you don't have your own ideas, we also have opportunities where you can work within host organizations that are looking for innovation, right? That have a list of problems that they haven't solved yet, and we help train students to start to kind of go through and concretely identify needs, come up with and prototype and kind of test within the host organization. So there's lots of opportunities to get started that way, especially if you're in the circumstance where you're like, you know what, I don't know what it is I actually want to do necessarily. I just know that I want to do something meaningful, right? So and then, based off of all that, our biggest thing is giving opportunities for young people to actually do this stuff in the real world, right? So it's beyond doing like class assignments and things. It's actually like, no, like, we want you to get out there and actually implement it, right? And engage in the community and make mistakes and learn from that, right? So, and a lot of that will result in skill building, which will enhance your ability to have those innovation entrepreneurial skills and just put you in a better position overall at a point in which you're entering the workforce to figure out, okay, how do I solve problems? Because those that have those skills, I think, they're always going to be in need, right? Regardless of the situation that we find ourselves in. So it's really important for us to help build those skills with the students that engage with us.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And again, being in the program, I can speak to it saying, yes, I've seen the work in action. I've seen people that come in with us. They might have an idea of what they want, but they don't know how to implement it, and seeing them go through the progression of, okay, this is more what I want to do. And then building an idea from it, or they start with an idea, they go through working on it a bit, and then they take some steps back and realize that that's not actually what they want to do, or that gap is already pretty full and they should try and navigate into somewhere else. So it's great for finding what you feel like your purpose is, or what you want to do, and finding something that you're really passionate about and you think will help others. I think that's the biggest thing, just trying to figure out the best way that you can help others. So having worked with so many young entrepreneurs or people interested in creating some sort of venture, you touched on it a bit. What's one of the key challenges you see young entrepreneurs facing, and how would you recommend, or how does Greenhouse help these people overcome those challenges?
Yeah, like I was thinking about this question in advance, Jenna, and realizing we're both sitting like self-isolated now in our respective home offices, and realizing we're really just at the cusp of what this public health emergency could look like, right? It's kind of that slow burn, wait and see. And I think it's really tough to give advice, right, given the current context. But I think there's some definite opportunities, right? And I think part of it is, first of all, taking stock of what you feel that you're in the emotional space or capacity to do at this point, right? Because for some of us, and it's perfectly fine, it's just, you know what, I just need to chill and connect with my family, and and there's so much uncertainty, etc. But for those of our students that are wanting to push and kind of continue moving forward, I think that there's definitely a lot of opportunity to connect with others, right? Even though we can't do it in person anymore. Certainly, reaching out to various groups, folks that you might find are folks that are doing interesting work that you want to learn more about. I think there's opportunities to kind of reach out and engage in that way. And then more broadly, I mean, every sector of our society right now is going through some sort of transformation as a result of this, right? And we don't know to what extent, but we do know that it's, there's that word unprecedented, right? And I often reflect upon this as it seems like we're entering this era of what we call creative destruction, right? That sounds really scary. But at the same time, I think there's more opportunity to do things differently. And so I'm definitely optimistic that despite all the challenges that we're currently facing, that we're going to inherently be facing, right? I think there's going to be more openness to change, and even just seeing what government's doing these days, right? Like I think back to when I was a university student, and some of my co-op opportunities were in government, and it seemed at the time like, oh gosh, I could never work in government. It's so slow, right? And bureaucratic. And now I think gosh, you know what? We now more than ever, we need young, innovative, entrepreneurial minds to be working in public service, right? Because just think of just the amount of decision making, and they're building as they're going along here with these various programs, right? We'll continue to do so, I think, for for quite a while as we move through these various stages of responding to this global pandemic. So I think there's there's more opportunities for young people to kind of think differently about how they might make a social impact. And then at the same time, I'm also highly cognizant of, especially my students that are just graduating this term, right? And usually they're often, a bit of a fork in the road. Do I accept that, job offer, job opportunity, or do I kind of continue down this path of building my my social enterprise, which, there's no guarantees that it will even financially support me in the short term, and struggling with that choice, right? And now, probably in many circumstances, that option of going the employment route might just not be there right now, right? Given the uncertainty. And so then it's like, okay, if I can't do that, then I'm going to continue to build and grow this thing, right? And so I can only speak for Greenhouse. We'll definitely be there for those young people that want to continue to build and grow their own thing, right? And figure out ways to do that. But yeah, that's kind of my long-winded answer to that. It's like, gosh, I think it's sort of, my response might change a week or two from now, depending on where we're at with these things, right? But I guess, like, bigger picture, higher level, it's like we're definitely in an age of massive disruption, and I would love to see more young people engaged than ever now, because I think that's going to be key to just recreating and reimagining how we do things going forward. So even though it's sort of dark gray times, there's also a light there, right? A light to really do something significantly meaningful, because we are in such an age of disruption, right? So yeah, so that's where my head is at with all that stuff right now. Yeah.
I like that there's a positive spin to it. I think we're also caught up in negativity right now and uncertainty, but for me, at least, like I was telling you before, I've been so productive over the past couple of weeks, just having the extra time to work on my venture. And I'll ask about this in a few minutes, but connections is also super important. And that's easy to do over online right now, and setting up a call and things like that, because staying connected is so important. So why not make those new connections? And we also talked about this during my natural disasters class, where I was telling you, Tania, about how we were talking about the pandemic and how it really connected to one of the assignments I did. But from other serious events that have happened, specifically, we looked at the 1980s Ethiopia famine and drought that happened. From that, there were major steps forward in social change. So they had actions were taken on a global scale from global governments and international nonprofits to reduce famine and stop it from hitting that level ever again. Or when you look at the SARS outbreak, although we are seeing these sort of we're seeing mirrored aspects in some ways with coronavirus, but people, when these big events happen, they say, okay, we need innovation to make sure this doesn't happen again. So right now we're seeing a lot of attention be called to our social systems and the social nets that are in place, and how corrupt they are in many senses, or how inequality is creating these massive issues all around the world. So I definitely think that we need innovation right now, and there is a lot of space for innovation, and youth need to find a way to access that and bring themselves into that more right now. And like we both said, having community partnerships is so essential. And right now it's great to be reaching out and making those introductions and figuring out where you can fit in. I know many people my age and younger are really intimidated by the idea of networking or just introducing yourself or asking for that recommendation. So what would you suggest to youth that are trying to make those connections, or just why it's so important to be making those community partnerships in the first place?
Yeah. Networking is key, right? But no one likes that word. It's almost like this dirty word. And I think maybe the reason why it might be perceived as dirty is, there's perceptions on it being, I guess, being authentic or non-authentic, right? And trying to coach and guide our students. I always say, like with connecting with people, it's critically important to kind of go in with the mindset, even though as a young person this might be hard to get your head around, is sort of like, okay, how might I be able to help whom I'm connecting with, right? Because I think that's part of the icky maybe feeling with networking, is you feel like you're asking for things, and it's sort of like a one-way relationship in a lot of ways, right? But there are definitely meaningful things that you can do to kind of address that and sort of feel like you're giving as well as receiving with respect to kind of those interactions that you have. I would say first and foremost, I think using that card that you're a student or a young person, it's huge, because I think a lot of us older folks can definitely relate to when we were young and trying to figure ourselves out, and really want to, when asked, we're kind of almost like honored, like, wow, like yeah, I would love to help and provide some guidance and relay some of my experiences, etc. And then the critical piece on our side is to just to have that acknowledgement back of, hey, you know what, that connection or that opportunity that you sent me, well, this is where it's at now, and here's what's happened as a result. It's kind of a neat feeling when you can kind of get a sense of, you know what, that little thing that I might have given that person, perhaps even changed the trajectory of where they were going, or gave them more confidence to pursue their idea, or put them on a path now where they can actually make a difference, right? So that's pretty significant. The whole intimidation factor with approaching folks that have more experience or years on you, yeah, I mean, that's pretty significant, right? I would have to say, when I was in high school, I was not like a very outgoing type person, right? I'm an introvert by nature, and so it wasn't until university that I really started to be more kind of like courageous in trying to connect and have a voice and pursue these sorts of opportunities to engage with people. So don't be hard on yourself if you're kind of struggling with that. I would say, like, maybe some starting points are even to look at who you currently know in your network. So whether it's friends, family members, reaching out to them and saying, hey, you know what, these are sort of the things I'm interested in, and if you know people that work in this particular space, I'd love an introduction, right? So it's kind of like getting warm introductions from people that know you fairly well, right? And can kind of speak for you and say, yeah, you know what, this is a good person to connect you with, right? Like, here's a warm connection, right? And then you start to get more confidence around that, right? And then get even more intentional about the different organizations or leaders or individuals that are working in a space that you're interested in, getting more plugged in that way. And then things like, when we do get back to a situation where we can go to conferences again and meet with people in person, that's also, those are also great opportunities to kind of build and have meaningful conversations, right? And even doing a little bit of work beforehand, knowing like who the speakers are and what sort of questions you might want to ask of them, right? Like going in with some informed questions, right? I think it really goes a long way as well. And then I guess the third thing would be, if you're lucky enough to be at a high school or at a university that has either a club or an innovation entrepreneurship kind of community, that's a great way to get started in building your network, because their whole role is to kind of broker those meaningful connections for you, so you can better understand the problem space that you're working in, but also look to develop partnerships to get your project off the ground. So definitely reach out if those groups are in place in your community, because they're there to kind of help you get connected, right? And link up with the right people and resources. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know when I was in high school and even in university, I was really intimidated by the idea of networking. And like you, I was very introverted, or I was one to, although I did like taking the initiative sometimes, I would just stepping outside of my network was kind of uncomfortable. But especially in the past year, I've made a lot of connections through Greenhouse and through other initiatives that I've run, that once you start doing it, you realize it's not a big deal and you're basically doing it every day, sometimes unconsciously networking. So it's, yeah, that word networking isn't really, it's more just building relationships, building connections with people, which
Exactly.
right now, yeah, it's so critical, if anything.
Yeah,
So,
huge. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, let's switch the word networking and just
Yeah,
call it
not networking,
making connection,
relationship building.
right?
That's
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
So I know that even from, I reflect back on this past year, especially because there has been so much change for me. And I wish that I could go back to a younger version of myself and say, okay, younger Jenna, these are some things that helped me, or these are some things that you should probably know going forward just to help you get through these tough times. For yourself, what would be one thing, one important thing that you would like to go back and tell high school Tania or early university, younger version of yourself?
Yeah, that's a good, because I was thinking a younger version of myself and thinking, gosh, to be young again, right? And to eat as much as I would like. Favorite vice is like chocolate and have no like repercussions other than acne. Acne would have been the thing then, right? So, yeah, what would I tell younger Tanya? I think, you know what? I mean, the biggest piece is sort of that. It's almost like the confidence piece, and then the so the apprehension or wanting to do things perfectly, right? Like being kind of a perfectionist type. It's always like that can hold you back from actually taking that next step and taking that leap. So you want to. I would say to my younger self, you know what? You don't have to have it like fully figured out. And in fact, if you can go out there and bounce ideas off of other people, right? That's actually going to get you there faster, and also help you like build alliances and partnerships to actually make the idea happen, right? So don't feel that you have to have it all figured out in your head before taking the leap to reach out and engage, right? So that would be what I tell my younger self. Yeah.
Definitely a good thing, because especially if you're trying to get into this entrepreneurial world or create your own project, you're not going to have everything figured out. And I don't think there's one phase in that process, even years down the road, if you have your own business and you're really successful, you don't have everything figured out. So it's just practicing that kindness and that patience with yourself and knowing things will work out. So important.
Exactly.
As our time comes to an end, I just wanted to ask you one last question. What would be one message you want to share with all youth interested in starting their own project that could be related to sustainability or anything really? Just one key thing that you think they should know about doing that.
Yeah, I would say, you know what? Fall in love with the problem that you're trying to solve, right? So when you're looking at like, new ideas or things that you might want to advance, like really dig in deep to ask yourself, well, why do I care about this? Like, what's my why? Like, do that sort of self-reflection piece. And if you don't, if you're in and that will kind of be your fuel, right? Because it's not an easy path to start things, because you have to carry them through the ups and downs of the journey, right? So it's really important that you're really in love with the problem that you're trying to solve. And then if you're in a situation where you're like, well, Tanya, I don't know what problem I'm not in love with anything right now. Then my biggest piece of advice would be, try a whole bunch of different things. Like, use the dating metaphor, just date a whole bunch of ideas or initiatives, right? Like get out there. And I say get out there like in the context of where we're sitting right now, right? Get out there and engage virtually, and join different groups, etc. Figure out ways that you can engage. Use the simple question of like, how can I help, right? So every conversation that you have with someone, how can I help? And then based on the answers you receive, figure out if you can offer that help, right? And just get yourself exposed to a whole bunch of different things, and eventually you'll fall in love with one or more problems to solve.
Great. Yes. Fall in love with what you're doing. That's what's important. You want to be doing something that you love doing.
Yes.
Because then you put full passion into it and people see that you really do care about it. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Tania, and being our first guest. It's so exciting. For anybody who's interested in learning more about what you do or the greenhouse program and how they could potentially get involved, where could they go to get those resources?
Yeah, you just pull up Google and type in Greenhouse, University of Waterloo, and we should pop up from there.
Great. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great day. And thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Jenna.
Thank you.
And that is it for our interview with Tania Del Matto from Greenhouse. I hope you enjoy this opportunity to listen to this amazing entrepreneur's advice and feel inspired to take on your own initiatives. I hope it brings clarity to how you can bring these projects to life, and I hope it has encouraged you to pursue that project that you've always wanted to pursue, or pursue that idea, especially with how much free time we likely all have at this point. Why not start right now? Please remember to comment, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. It's how we get it out to more people and how we spread the word and how we can show more people that they can make a change in the world. I hope you have an amazing day. Until next time.